We've been fortunate enough to not have a hurricane hit us for years. So does that mean Matthew is going to affect my insurance?
Welcome to the show that takes up no more than 5 minutes of your time, but could help you gain massive real estate knowledge. It's 5 Minutes in Real Estate with best-selling author Shane Willis.
This is a serious storm. It has already hit Haiti with devastating effect. It is now in the process of moving through the Bahamas. Because it's not going to be hitting enough land, it is going to be building strength on its way to Florida.
All right, so as I'm recording this, Florida just experienced its first hurricane in years. So how is that going to affect us? Initially, there were just a lot of concerns for safety. I even got calls, and it kind of got a little strange for me because I was getting emails and reached out from all over the country and a few different other countries asking if we were okay. I guess I did not realize that many people listen to this podcast. But we were fine. Thank you for everybody that reached out. We were actually not in any danger at all. This is a big state, and I was probably 360 miles from Jacksonville to the west. So we were fine. But thanks for reaching out. And so that happened. But then over the weekend, as I was talking to folks, friends, and we were bringing up the hurricane and we were bringing up what was going on, the big concern was, how is that going to affect our insurance now here in Florida? Because this is the first storm in a few years. And so I decided to basically just dedicate this week's podcast to discussing insurance real quick, so a lot of people know that it shouldn't affect us too much as far as our homeowners insurance policies. But for those of you who do not know, obviously flood insurance is something that I highly recommend to a lot of people. But I'm not an insurance agent, so let's discuss in the state of Florida what the two different types are and what the differences are. Your homeowners insurance is what everybody was talking about. Is it going to affect the price of my homeowner's insurance? Well, that's what's required by your lender. Your lender may require flood insurance, but for the most part, you're going to want home insurance. Even if you don't have a loan, you're going to want to get homeowner's insurance on it because that protects against a lot of different things. And it does protect against some water events. The water events are going to be like your burst pipe. If there is a storm, wind or storm-driven rain, most of your homeowner's insurance is going to cover that water damage. The difference between that and flood, and I learned this the hard way actually 2 years ago. One of my rental properties flooded here in Pensacola. We had the 100-year flood. We had foot or two or a ton of freaking rain that hit us all in about a 48-hour period. The property that I owned was not in a flood zone, but it flooded. It got about a foot of water in the house. So when I called to file the claim, the definition was very simple, did the property flood because of water coming down, or was it because of water going up? Well, obviously it was from water coming up because it came up through the yard and then it just came into the house. So that's the definition of flood. And if you actually look at the definition of flood insurance, it says flood is defined as a rising and overflowing of a body of water onto normally dry land. So that rising, if it's coming up, that's what's really going to be more affected. But kind of the good thing is most of our flood insurance is actually a federal insurance. It's written and regulated through the National Flood Insurance Program, which is administered through FEMA. So these are government policies. These are not private insurance policies. Now, I say that with a little bit of caution because I want to give you a little bit more education. In 2012, in Florida, the United States Congress passed the Biggert Waters Act. That extended the National Flood Insurance Program, but there were some other stipulations that happened that even some of our commissioners here, the Florida Insurance Commissioner, warned, hey, you should expect some increase in prices. And that happened in 2013, and just as predicted, we did see some prices start to go up. Now, in March of 2014, Congress passed, the president signed off on the Homeowners Flood Insurance Affordability Act. Now that repealed and modified some of the BW rules that we got passed earlier. It also streamlined. Well, no, it was the precursor. Excuse me. It was the precursor to what our state legislation passed, which was the Senate Bill 542, flood insurance. And it said that we will allow some small companies to write flood insurance, not small companies, small section. They had to be large companies. There was a big standard there. So that you could get some private. They were trying to privatize the market instead of it just being FEMA. So we're trying to privatize the market a little bit to affect pricing, keep pricing down. On top of all of this, so we do have some companies that were able to write flood, but flood is going to be what's mainly affected because that was the mass damage that happened in this particular storm, was the storm surge. So that's what's going to be affected. So FEMA should be handling most of that. Most of our homeowners insurance policies shouldn't be affected all that much. Again, I say that cautiously because there is a handful of companies that this is their first hurricane. They came into Florida. Remember, it's been years since we've seen a hurricane here. So they came into Florida writing the policies after the last ones, 2004, 2005. So after those last couple of ones, they've come in and this is the first one they've dealt with. And there is going to be some damage. There is going to be some claims. So we'll have to look at their strength. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about, especially up here in the Panhandle where we're looking at, there is a rezoning happening with flood insurance right now. Some areas that didn't require flood insurance now are going to. Some that used to are now not going to. And also because of that act, if you own a property as a homestead, you pay a little bit less of a premium than if you don't. And I know that when my insurance agent called me and told me that, I got aggravated at her, but it wasn't her fault. She just was informing me. My home is not an insurance or a flood zone, but I keep flood insurance anyways because I live close enough to the water that if the storm surge, like if Matthew had hit the way it was here, then I'm pretty sure we would have had a storm surge in my house. And so I'd rather just keep the flood insurance. It costs me $400 and some odd a year. So that's actually really kind of nothing compared to what type of damage could have been done from flood insurance. But this rezoning is what I wanted to mention real quickly because there's going to be people that are not going to be required to have flood insurance anymore. If you're not required to have flood insurance anymore, you're just going to try and save the few pennies. And I would challenge you on that to really take a look at the possibilities. There's a reason we have insurance, and the risk is if you're not in a flood zone, it's very inexpensive, but it's a big peace of mind. And like I said, as I, from personal experience, found out when my rental flooded, I had just got finished rehabbing that rental because I had purchased it as a short sale. I had just spent about $15,000 rehabbing that, and literally right afterwards, I had to go back and rehab it again, and cost me even more money. But it was no insurance that covered it. So I would challenge you with this rezoning on flood insurance to seriously consider keeping or getting flood insurance. A lot of times if you've owned the property and you just go out today to get flood insurance, there's going to be a 30-day wait period. So you're going to have to wait a month. But I would seriously consider flood insurance unless you are really far north. And even then, it might not be from storm surge. Remember, it's rising waters. So I know some properties north of 9 Mile Road here in Pensacola that just got completely destroyed in that same flood that I was talking about a couple of years ago. Nowhere near a flood zone. But one of the creeks rose and, well, it flooded the whole neighborhood. So seriously consider that flood insurance. I think that the storm like Matthew will give everybody a chance to go back, kind of reevaluate. Remember, we live in Florida. Just because we've enjoyed years without a hurricane, they do happen here. So reevaluate your insurance, both homeowners and flood. And if you haven't got flood insurance yet, you may want to consider it. That's it for this week. I wanted to ask everyone, if you haven't done so already, go on over to iTunes, give me a comment on the podcast. I'm actually going to be turning this into a YouTube channel too. I'm going to turn all the podcasts in. I'm currently working on that right now. I got some staff working on that. It's really, really good. And so we're working on getting a YouTube channel to where every one of these videos or every one of these podcasts will be turned into a video for YouTube, so you can subscribe to that channel. That'll be coming soon. Stay tuned for that. All right, thanks for listening. Have a great week.